so grateful that you are spending your Sunday with me. And Happy New Year to you. This is the first Sunday of a brand new year, and I am grateful. I don't know about you, but I am grateful that I am in the new year. I'm grateful for the lessons that I learned last year and for all of the blessings. And I'm excited to see what the Lord is going to do in 2019. And I just want to thank you for your support. Thank you for being here and just participating. To this year, we have a lot of heavy topics. Let's say that. We're going to dig deeper into what we've been talking about. Remember, we're about real topics for men and women of faith because we live in a very real world. And so we're going to start off this month with talking about grief. Yep, grief, because we cannot escape life without dealing with loss and the death of a loved one. But how do we live through that? How do we thrive through that? And how do we grow? And so today we're going to talk about another aspect of grief, and that is infant mortality. That is a huge topic that impacts our African American community, and we have to talk about it. We need to understand what it is, and we need to understand how do we prevent it. And today our guest is one of my friends, because y'all know I only interview my friends, and her name is Rasheeda Larkin, and she is passionate about this topic of infant mortality. And so we're going to talk about why our Black and brown babies are dying before their first birthday and what are the statistics around it. And Rasheeda's going to help us understand those statistics and what we can do as individuals to make a difference in this area. Our lives are so precious. In fact, this month's theme is about celebrating life and how do we embrace the preciousness of life and how do we embrace the joy that comes with living. And so today we're going to talk about infant mortality. Rasheeda, my friend, thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So before we jump into the topic and go into the questions, tell us more about you. Help us to get to know you for the audience that doesn't know Rasheeda like I do.
As the kids would say, I'm a very regular type of girl. But a little bit about me is that I am very much into family. So knowing me is knowing that I have a ton of family and a ton of friends that I would do anything for. I'm a mom of one and a new mom auntie to one as well. I am a wife, which is always an adventurous time. And a block club president,
What?
which is it's very new to me, and I'm just as surprised as you are. I am someone that just has plenty of sides to me. I'm an avid motorcycle rider and enthusiast.
Yay.
I am a new Sunday school teacher. I told
Right.
you my adventures in that. And I'm just the type of person that really enjoys life. That's it.
And so you are the perfect guest to talk about or kicking off the Celebrating Life theme. And so let's dig deeper into the infant mortality topic. Help us understand what that word is, infant mortality, because I think we may have some misconceptions about what it exactly is.
Yeah, it's really great that we start off this conversation just getting a straight definition, because a lot of people really have these misconceptions as to what it really is. And what infant mortality is any baby who was born alive and dies before the age of 1. The misconceptions around that is that a lot of people believe these are miscarriages or that it has a lot to do with deformities or babies that maybe would have never made it to begin with.
Okay.
But a lot of it is babies who would definitely have a chance and would have been just fine if there were some strategies put in place.
Okay. So tell me, when you talk about strategies, what exactly are you talking about? So what is the cause of these babies dying?
So the number one cause, especially here in Northeast Ohio and Cuyahoga County, is premature birth. So these are any babies who are born before 37 weeks. Also, the second cause of it that is 100% preventable is safe sleep. So these are babies who are in unsafe sleep environments, such as cribs with bumpers in it, or blankets or pillows, or fall asleep on the couch and kind of fall into that crack in the couch and kind of suffocate. A lot of that is when babies are born, remember that they don't have the best head control movements,
Right.
and their little brains are so new, so breathing is new It's a new thing for them. So they don't know how to lift up their head and breathe. So a lot of them will die in their sleep, not due to SIDS, which we are finding out is really a rare case that babies just suddenly die in their sleep. It's usually to something that has happened to them that they could not get out of.
And so you're talking about prematurity. So does that have to deal with the mom's health and her getting prenatal care? What are the causes of that?
So that's just a packed question. So a part of it is, yes, it absolutely starts with mom's health. So mom has to be healthy before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and even as we start to look at infant mortality and afterwards, making sure that mom stays healthy in order to stay alive for that baby. But that's a separate topic. Another part of it is prematurity. What we're finding is due to stress as well, stress on the mom. So when we're talking about physical health, we're just not talking about prenatal care and taking your prenatal vitamins. What we are finding out is that a lot of our moms do that. They take their prenatal vitamins, they have their folic acid, they have all the vitamins that they need. They're going to their prenatal appointments early within the first trimester. What we're finding out is that a lot of it is due to stress and having those cortisol, those stress hormones in their body increasing. And anybody who has high blood pressure or hypertension, we know how stress can impact your health. Or if you have GI problems, we know how stress can impact your health, and it definitely can impact your womb. So that's one part of it, is like the mental health and the stress of mom. But also the second part of it that people do not want to talk about, because it is such a hard topic to talk about, but it is as American as apple pie, which is racism. And how Black moms live in the world today in 2018, carrying a life and dealing with the stress of just showing up as a Black woman.
So I wanted you to go deeper into that, because I know from just knowing your story and knowing you when you were pregnant with your son, Langston, and some of the experiences that you had, because I don't think that anybody would say that racism was tied to infant mortality. So help us to understand, and when you talk about that stress from being a Black woman and how we are maybe treated when we go to the doctors, or just the world that we live in, can you unpack that further?
Absolutely, and I'll unpack it from two sides. So one is definitely the way that Black women are treated in healthcare. The stories have come out time and time again. It's been murmuring through our neighborhoods forever. I mean, we go back in the historical cases and talk about the Tuskegee experiment and all of these other things that have happened in the past, and there's definitely still happening here. But as a Black woman, is my pain being taken seriously? When I say that I have an issue, is that being taken seriously, or am I looked at as being dramatic? Do I have that opportunity not to just have access to health care, but do I have that opportunity to build a relationship with a provider who sees me as a human being, and who takes my concern seriously just because they see me?
Right.
So that's one part of it, is the healthcare provider role. But also the second part of it is, what do I experience just as a Black woman carrying a baby outside of healthcare? So what am I experiencing in my neighborhoods? Do I feel safe? Not just at home, but do I feel safe walking down the street? Do I live in a neighborhood that is taking care of me in a way that is emotionally supportive? So when I walk across the street, are the cars speeding past me when they see me walking down the street, or are they stopping and yielding like they would for anyone else? When I get on the bus, is someone standing up and letting me sit down because I'm a woman that happens to be pregnant? It's little things, what we call microaggressions now, which we realize really does increase that stress and causes us to look at the world differently, and for the world to interact with us differently than they would with someone else who may be pregnant.
Very good question about stress, because, I didn't think that the conversation would head to stress, but it sounds like it's something that we need to address, because it's the health of the mom and the health of the baby. And I don't know if we always appreciate the impact of stress. We live with it every day, not just walking down the street, but at home, at work, in our personal relationships, just dealing with our health issues, just dealing with life in general, and understanding that the impact that it has on us, whether we see it immediately or not, but that it's actually building up and having a negative impact in our lives. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that I need to add that to my list for interviews, because that's important for us, especially as Black American, African Americans in the community. But I want to talk about your experience when you were pregnant with Langston, and talk about how your experience with going to the doctor and maybe how you were received personally, because I think that ties into why this topic is so important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found out I was pregnant, and I was uber excited.
Uber
Excited. Not like the car service.
Just uber
excited. So we had prayed for this baby. I was excited and nervous and just didn't know what I was going to do. But with this being my first pregnancy, I didn't really know what to expect. And also, as we all know, you're in your sister circles and everybody is kind of getting to these life stages, you know, together, since we grew up together. So everybody is kind of graduating college together, getting married together, starting to have babies. But you don't really start to have these conversations until things start happening. So for me, when I got pregnant, maybe about a couple of weeks later, I start to experience bleeding.
Okay.
Now I know that is normal in the very beginning of your pregnancy. Then I freaked out,
right?
Because in my mind, I'm bleeding, I'm having a miscarriage. So I called all of my friends who are nurses or doctors, and I'm getting on everyone's nerves. And they're telling me it's fine, this is normal, but I know you have your appointment set, see if you can go in a little bit earlier. So I called the doctor and I went in earlier. And I remember it was the last appointment of the day. So radiology was closed. I couldn't get an ultrasound to see what was really happening, but the doctor had an ultrasound machine in his room.
Okay.
He told me from the beginning, this is not a good machine, like it is in radiology. I'll be able to see something, but I won't be able to tell the whole picture. We can kind of see a look-see and see what's happening. So I was there. I wasn't in my work attire. My hands were swelling in the beginning of my pregnancy, so I didn't have on a ring. I think I was off that day. So my hair was like wild, and then my curls. I was really cute. And my mom was with me. So we walked in, he gave me an ultrasound, maybe all of 2 minutes. Now, what he didn't know, which I'm sure is totally, again, HIPAA violations, is that one of my best friends was on the phone with me, and who happens to be an OBGYN. Because mind you, I'm getting on everybody's nerves. So, you know, we're all on the phone.
Right, okay.
And after 2 minutes of looking, he says, I don't see a sac, and I'm sorry to tell you that you're having a miscarriage. And I am going to give you these pills to help abort the baby. And then I want you to come in a couple of weeks to get a D&C. And I was shocked.
I'm sure.
Mind you, my mother's there. I am the baby of 2 girls. And I knew if a tear dropped, my mom was going to tear up that entire exam room. So my goal was just stare straight ahead and don't cause anyone around me any stress.
Okay.
Until my best friend says, hey, this is wrong. And so I said, well, what am I supposed to do? And she says, this isn't the care path. This is not what's supposed to happen. What's supposed to happen is that you're going to ask him for a lab test to determine what your hormones are today and what they are 24 to 48 hours from now. I said, okay. He gave me the prescription for the pills. I went down to the pharmacy, picked up the pills, and asked him, hey, can I get a script for the lab or referral to the lab? And he said, yeah, sure, but I'm pretty confident that you're having a miscarriage. I said, okay. So I went to the lab. I took the test. 24 to 48 hours, went back for another test. My hormones had increased by five times the average increase of hormones.
As if you were pregnant.
So it came back, the lab told me, so now we're concerned that it's not that you're having a miscarriage, it's that you're carrying multiples. And we don't know how many babies are in there. So I said, okay. So, which is normal because my husband is a twin. My mother-in-law is a saint, and she had 2 sets of twins back to back. They're 10 months apart. So I was like, oh, maybe this is happening.
Okay.
So the doctor was supposed to call me back, never called me back. I had to call the doctor back several times within 1 week. And by the time I finally got him on the phone, which was about a week and a half later, the nurses were saying, hey, did you take those pills? And I said, no, I didn't take the pills. And I remember her saying, thank God. thank God that you didn't take the pills. Her looking over my lab results. And I got the doctor on the phone, and my first question for him is that if I was the CEO's daughter, is that the type of care that you would have given me? Mm. And he was honest, and he said no. He admitted that this was the wrong thing to do. And he said, I'm sorry, I must have been in a rush. I didn't think this through clearly. And I said, I really just want you to understand that you really could have impacted my life. And thank God that I had a husband who prayed with me over these pills and said, if this is what God wants for us, things will happen naturally, but we won't make this happen. So that was my story. And that's what really opened up my eyes about the differences that Black women, how we are treated when it comes to healthcare versus what other people experience.
Rasheeda, thank you so much for sharing that story. I had never heard it in this detail, and so thank you so much for being vulnerable and putting yourself out there and sharing that story. And I'm so grateful that your best girlfriend was on the phone, because you would not have known to ask that question about the lab work. And that's where it really, where the rubber meets the road, because if we don't know what to ask, what to expect, then the outcomes will continue to be the same. And so thank goodness that you had an advocate in your life who knew about it and could then direct you on the path so that you have this wonderful, beautiful baby boy that you may not have had if you had have just gone by what the doctor was saying. And I think that is the message that we want to really relay to people. Be an advocate. Know as much as you can, research, go to these appointments prepared, because that's what it sounds like. You were prepared. You had your girlfriend on the line who's an expert, OBGYN. You had your mother there for support. And so I think that's what we need all women to do.
Absolutely.
To be prepared and ask questions. And if something doesn't feel right, right? Because just listening to you tell the story about the interaction or the bedside manner of this physician makes me cringe as a nurse. Like, oh my goodness, where is the empathy? Where is the compassion? Where is the, let's sit down and let me explain to you what I think is happening? Or even, let's get an ultrasound when radiology is open to check before I give you these pills to abort your baby. And before you started your story, you talked about the way you walked in, your appearance. You said you didn't have on your ring, your hair was wild. And so it sounds like you were alluding to some misconceptions that the physician may have read you as being something else. And then he approached you in that manner. Is that what you were trying to say?
Absolutely. So I think, one of these things, and it goes back to that stress thing. And I think as Black women, the way that we show up in the world is so important to us. And it's something that we go over and we think about all the time. Not just at doctor's appointments. We think about it at work. Am I polished enough? Do I look a certain way when I present to this board that no one in this room looks like me? Are they taking what I say seriously because of my look? We think about it in church. We think about it everywhere. So to me, that was something that I thought about. Is it because that he didn't see that I was married, or is it because my hair was in its natural state, which I love, but maybe
so do I, right?
But what it boils down to is that it really doesn't matter what I look like. He should have seen me as a human being.
Right.
And that's the importance of having that relationship with a provider who sees you.
Right. And that is another key takeaway. You're just bringing up a lot of stuff. Having a relationship with a provider who knows you, that you can trust, and that you can have this open dialogue with, because when something isn't right, this provider will be the one to actually notice it and to be your advocate as well. So thank you again for sharing that. Very important points for women who are pregnant, and then for women who are just have someone that's pregnant in their lives to be that advocate for them. Now, I want to turn to some alarming statistics, and it's from First Year Cleveland.
Yes.
And I will post this on our Facebook page so that you will have the entire infographic, but it's sharing data from 2017. And it said in Cuyahoga County, there were a total of 14,558 births in 2017. And out of those total births, 118 babies did not make it till their first birthday.
Yes.
And you said that was equivalent to 5 kindergarten classes, right? And the data goes on, if that's not alarming enough, the data goes on to show the difference between black babies and white babies. Can you break down the statistics for us?
Absolutely. And the reason, let me go back to the 5 kindergarten classrooms. I think when we hear that over 14,000 babies were born and we hear 118, we think of it as such a minuscule number. And I think that's because we've been so desensitized. So I want to talk about that later when we really talk about celebrating life and how to go back to not being so desensitized to these things. But 118 classrooms, 118 babies, 5 kindergarten classrooms. And what we found is in Cuyahoga County, we have some of the worst infant mortality rates in the United States. We're second from the bottom. So that's us here in Cleveland, which means that there are some third world countries who are doing better than us in regards to keeping their babies alive and healthy. Now, last year, an article came out saying that our infant mortality rate has dropped, and we were so excited. And what we found out is that the white infant mortality rate had dropped from about 5% to now about 2%. And what we found out with our black babies is that our black infant mortality rate had increased about 4 times the amount. So for every 1 white baby that passes away in Cuyahoga County, which is terrible in itself, we have 4 to 5 black babies that are passing away. So our rate is just getting worse and worse. And just to make this point very clear, a lot of people automatically assume, oh, because they're black babies, it's due to being impoverished. And I have to remind people that all black people aren't poor.
Right.
So that's definitely not the case. When we look at these babies who are passing away in these families who are just in so much tragedy, we found that it's 50% that are on Medicare and 50% that have private insurance. So we know that that's not the case, or Medicaid. I apologize. It's not an insurance issue either. It is definitely a race issue. And it's going to keep coming back to that. And I always say that racism is just as American as apple pie and baseball. And it really is. And until we are open to having those conversations in an honest and transparent way, we're never going to get to the root of infant mortality.
Right. And you're talking about structural racism in addition to prematurity and safe sleep, and then all of that wrapped up into stress. And so this is very heartbreaking as I'm sitting here listening to these statistics, because this is preventable. This is a topic that we shouldn't even be having. This is something that should not be impacting our community the way that it is. And that's why it was so important for us to have this conversation, because I wanted to bring awareness to our audience that this is an issue that we can prevent, but yet our babies are dying every day. Some shape, form, or fashion, whether it's infant mortality from the things that you talked about or from violence. And it just goes back to life being precious, but do we value life, right? Do we value all lives? And I think your experience with the physician, which is really making you passionate about this, was that he really didn't value your life. At least that's what I'm saying. And so I think that we have to be able to talk about these conversations, but then it's not just about us knowing about it, but then, Rasheeda, help us to understand what we can do about it. And I know that we've got some calls coming in. I'm so excited. I don't want to take one right now. If you don't mind holding, I just want to talk about what we can do, and then we'll go into the calls.
So one of the things you've already hit on, so I'm thinking about people that are outside of the medical profession. So if you're not an OBGYN, if you're not a nurse, if you're not one of those frontline caregivers who absolutely make a difference, just checking people in and, getting to know them and building that relationship. I think a part of that, honestly, is just being a good friend. Being a good family member, being a good advocate, being a good neighbor, being a good bystander, seeing things that are happening and being able to step up and say something. So knowing that someone is pregnant that's around you or have little kids, check in on them.
Okay.
See if they are okay. Ask them about their doctor's appointment. Ask them who they're going to see. Do you know how I found my OBGYN?
How?
I went online to see who had 5 stars.
Wow. Okay. The rating matters.
Right. I looked at ratings, but I knew nothing personally about, no one gave me advice about who to go to, or, you hear old wives' tales, but I didn't know about all the real things that happen during pregnancy.
Right.
Even having remember how I introduced myself is that I have a great group of family and friends that
Exactly.
are around me. And I think sometimes we assume because someone is at a certain level in their life or because they seem to have everything so much together, we assume that they know everything, and they don't.
They don't.
So I was going in this thing blind, and I was just so overwhelmed with excitement. I didn't know anything else.
Right.
And I was okay with that because I was having this baby and God had blessed me and I was happy. So I think number one, just being there for someone, being an advocate, going with her to her doctor's appointments, or even if she doesn't ask any questions, just being able to give her information about what you heard or what's up to date. Not any of those crazy things that you've heard online, but like real factual, scientific based things. Where to go for support, whether it's support groups or whether it is getting a doula, or, do you know the difference between an OBGYN and a midwife? Those things that really make a difference. I think the second thing too is always being able to empower yourself. So as a pregnant mom or a dad or a grandparent, being okay with telling a provider no. Another thing that I tell new moms and dads is date your doctor until you're ready to get married. You don't go into this any relationship just ready to commit. You check them out. We're kind of getting to know each other. I've heard some things about you, went through your past, and I'm kind of see what I like. So I think that's the second thing, is feel empowered. Doctors are doctors of general practice. They are not the doctors of your body.
Amen.
They don't know what is going on with you and how you feel. So if you feel something strange, be okay to say something. And if they don't take it seriously, be okay to take your business elsewhere because you're paying them.
And that is a good point. Be willing to take your business elsewhere because you are paying them, even though it's through your insurance or it could be private pay. They're supposed to be at service for you. And you have to educate yourself to know what questions to ask, because truth be told, we don't know what we don't know. But if we research it, I'm pregnant, what to expect, and the internet provides a wealth of information, and I think being willing to be prepared and give the questions. So I think you said be an advocate for people, and then empower yourself when you're going to these appointments. Very good. So I think we've got some callers, Larry says, and I didn't even announce the number, but it's 216-298-1554, and we will take our callers if they're still on the line.
I can call them back.
They're going to have to call back. Okay, so if you called and you hung up, Larry will call you back so that we can definitely take your question, because Rasheeda, this is just such a wealth of information, good information for people to have. And I think we talked about the statistics and we talked about how to prevent it. You talked about being empowered and being an advocate. You talked about safe sleep and getting your doctor visits, doing your prenatal care. And so any last words to the audience about this? And you've also shared why you're so passionate about this, so thank you. But any last words, anything that we did not discuss?
Yeah, so a part of being an advocate is knowing all your resources. So I do want to just educate your audience to let them know some things that they should know of. The first thing that you want to educate pregnant moms and new moms and dads around you are all the different community organizations that are here to help.
So community support.
So community support. Number one, before we go to community support, know about the different types of care. So not just traditional care, know about centering pregnancy as well. That gives you extra education. Know about doula organizations like Birth and Beautiful Communities, like Healthy Start, all of these different things that support moms. I think we have a call
I think we
through.
do. Okay.
Okay, caller, go ahead.
Yes, I want to ask, what can dads do to help?
What can dads do to help?
Right. Very good
Yes.
question, because it's not just about moms, it is about dads. Thank you so much for that question.
So dads play such a vital role when it comes down to babies and babies dying before the age of 1. I think sometimes because moms and babies, kind of go hand in hand, we forget about the dads.
Big mistake.
It is the hugest mistake because dads are the ones that are the calm during the storm of pregnancy and new moms. So dad, I think just being there for mom, knowing how to be a support role, even if you and mom are not together. Knowing how to co-parent well, how to support that family structure, checking in on mom emotionally and seeing how she's doing, showing up to those doctor's appointments. I felt totally different with my husband in the room with me. Totally different. And he would ask questions that I guess my mind was racing so much I didn't even think to ask the questions that he would ask. So showing up in that way, connecting with the Fatherhood Initiative. They do a great job of giving dads training. What I noticed is that a lot of dads don't know how to be a dad until they are a dad.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is a lot of women through life, I held my first baby at like 4. Newborn baby. My husband held his first baby in the room when I gave birth. So even just holding a baby, how to cuddle, how to feed, how to change a diaper, the Fatherhood Initiative can definitely help you with that. But I would say dads checking in on mom. Postpartum depression is real. Perinatal depression is real. Going through all these changes is real, and also helping with the stress level of mom, giving her that extra love and comfort and support.
Right. Now, many of us may not know what the Fatherhood Initiative is. So can you tell us where to get information about that and what is it?
Absolutely. So the Fatherhood Initiative is a program through Cuyahoga County. It is ran by Mr. Grimes, and he has a few program managers who help out. And what they do is hold Daddy Boot Camp workshops. So they go around the city and even outside of the city, and they host these different workshops to teach dads those exact same things: how to bond, how to hold, how to cuddle, how to feed. But more than that, they talk about the relationships and why dads are so important. And even if they're not connected to things like jobs or healthcare, or one of the big issues for babies, especially if they're premature, but any baby, is smoking. So secondhand smoke, thirdhand smoke. So helping to connect dads with resources that will help them to quit smoking, or help them get jobs, or help dad feel supported so that he can be the head of that family.
Right, right. And it's important when you talk about that dads don't know how to be a dad until they're actually a dad. And the difference with the mom is that we carry the baby. Right. And so we're bonding while we're pregnant. Our body is going through these changes. We're dealing with all of these emotions. So when that baby comes, we are ready and excited. But you're right, for the dad, he is not until he can touch that baby, see that baby, that
That's
it's
when it becomes real.
Exactly. And so I love that you brought up the Fatherhood Initiative, because we want this to be supportive of both parents, right? And you
Absolutely.
made a good point, whether you're in that relationship or not. That baby needs you.
Absolutely.
Right. In order for that baby to make it to that first year and to thrive, we need both parents to be actively involved.
Absolutely.
Now, you talked about safe sleep. And I know when my daughter, she's now 20 years old, but that was a long time ago, I placed her on her back. I placed her on her stomach. We placed her on her side. I mean, she slept in all positions. And so now I understand that that has changed. So help us to understand, what is safe sleep?
Right. So the easy way to remember safe sleep is now what we call the ABCDs of safe sleep.
Okay.
So that means that baby being alone. So we have a lot of these ideas that, we can sleep with baby in the bed with us. But if you are a new mom and new dad and you are exhausted, and you haven't slept in so long because this baby sleeps and wakes up after 2 hours, you haven't really gotten a good night's sleep, it is easy to think of being in the bed and possibly rolling over baby, or getting too close to baby, or making sure that pillows and comforters aren't close to baby to suffocate baby. So making sure the baby is alone. B stands for the back, making sure that baby is on their backs when they're in the crib. And C, of course, is crib, or any place where they're by themselves, like a pack and play, a crib, a bassinet. And also the D is don't smoke. So what we find out and what we know is that when baby is smelling secondhand or thirdhand smoke, so of course secondhand smoke is when I'm smoking and you're next to me and you're breathing in those fumes. Thirdhand smoke impacts baby as well. So that means I went to go smoke outside, and now the smoke is on my clothes, it's in my hair, it's on my shirt. And what do I do when I go in the house? I pick up baby and put baby on my shirt, or So baby is still breathing in those toxins. And what we know about cigarettes, it has over 3,000 toxins in them, none of which are safe for you, let alone a fresh baby out the womb. And also what we know about smoke is that it kills brain cells. So remember, baby is new. Baby is learning how to breathe. So if baby is smelling the secondhand or thirdhand smoke, and I'm killing those brain cells, not intentionally, of course, but I'm killing brain cells, it's hard for baby to lift up that head to know when to move and when to breathe and all of those things. We found out that every single baby that died in 2016 had a smoker in the home. Every single one. So that's how we know that it's impactful. So going back to being an advocate or being empowered also means for mom or dad to tell the people around you, you can't smoke in my house. You can't smoke while you're have the care of my baby. If you go outside and smoke, I need you to change all your clothes before you come back in, so you will have to figure it out. Or yes, I would need you to put this blanket on you before you pick up baby. So that's a part of being empowered too, not just with healthcare providers, but feel empowered with your own family members.
Right, and creating that safe environment. That's really what you're talking about, but you have to be knowledgeable of it in order to be able to create that safe environment. So I just want to go back through what you said about A, B, C, D. And we're talking again about safe sleep. So A is that they should sleep alone.
Yes.
B, they should be on their back. They should be, C is a crib or a pack and play, but somewhere where it's safe for them. And then D, don't smoke. And that's first-hand smoke, second-hand smoke, third-hand smoke. Just don't smoke around the baby. And like you said, if you go outside, that's wonderful. But come in, wash your hands, and then use a cloth so that the baby is not inhaling the toxins from your clothes. But also remember about smoke. It's in your hair.
Yes.
Right? It's on you.
Your body.
It's on your face. And so then we go to kiss the baby. And so all of these things matter. And I don't know that we've had conversations to this depth to be able to talk about these things. And so I'm grateful that we are sharing this information and that now that we know better, we can do better, right?
And one more thing to getting back to safe sleep and being an advocate.
Okay.
Please encourage the moms around you to breastfeed. And this is very taboo in our communities when we think about the spaces where we breastfeed, because baby needs to eat anywhere.
That's true.
So therefore, creating these spaces, whether it is at work, whether it is in an organization or a place that you visit regularly, whether you are at church. I remember a deacon making a stump around my church because he was so upset that I did not have a place to breastfeed.
Okay.
And he was like, she's not going in the bathroom because I don't eat in the bathroom. So we have to figure this out.
I like
and
that.
I mean, he really, so thank you, Deacon Fegan over at Affinity. You're great. Also, when we think about the history behind breastfeeding and how now it's all organic and it's this new thing that the others are doing. This is something that we've been doing in our communities for a long time, and we know that it has a history behind it, but also just feel encouraged to do it. So if mom wants to breastfeed, even if no one else in the family has done it before, give that mom that freedom to do that, because it would help baby with safe sleep. Just like tobacco turns off those brain cells, breastfeeding turns on those brain cells. And of course, we want smarter babies in our community.
Absolutely. And I think I've always been an advocate of breastfeeding because I think it is amazing that we as a mom, as a woman, I can feed my baby through my breast, right? I mean, that is huge when you think about how, God created us to nurture that baby, but then to feed that baby with our own bodies. I love it. And I think it's very rewarding. It's challenging when you breastfeed, because I remember my doctor saying, you learned how to breastfeed, but your baby didn't come out of the womb knowing how to breastfeed. So the both of you need to work together. And so I would like to encourage moms, if you are going to breastfeed, definitely be patient with the process, but it is so rewarding in the end and what you're giving to your baby.
Be gentle with yourself.
Be gentle with yourself. Absolutely. Okay, Rasheeda, this has been very informative. Is there anything we missed before we get into our theme and our scripture?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, very good. I am going to post the first year Cleveland statistics on our page on Because of His Grace Ministries. I think it's important for you to be able to see the infographic and look at the details of the statistics because they are alarming. And the takeaway message is that it is preventable. And that is why we are having this conversation, because everything around infant mortality is preventable. And we want our babies to make it to their first birthday. Now, our theme, Rasheeda, for this month is celebrating life.
I love it.
Yes, me too. And in spite of the conversation about babies dying, we can celebrate the hundreds, thousands of babies that are born and just celebrate life in general. And our scripture text is one of my favorites, is Psalms 118:24. And it says, "This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." Think about your life. What does this scripture mean to you, and how would you tie it into the conversation that we've just had?
So one of the things that I want to say about this verse, what hit me is this trend that's been going on, and it's self-care, right? So everyone is talking about self-care, how great it is, going to Nordstrom's or Saks or whatever your self-care may be. And what I want to take it back to is really taking care of yourself and celebrating your life and celebrating what you've done and taking those moments to be grateful and to really reflect, especially around this time of the year when you're looking over 2018 and looking forward to 2019.
Right.
And back to our topic, some people may say, well, how do we celebrate life talking about infant mortality? And it goes back to the statement that I made about being desensitized. And I think sometimes, people talk about me because I don't watch the news all the time.
Me neither.
And I really control my social media to see what I see and what I don't see purposefully and intentionally because you do have to guard your spirit. But I think a part of me doing that is being very fierce and protective over the lives that are around me. So sometimes celebrating life means I'm so protective over this community that I'm willing to be an advocate and willing to go out and do whatever I can do to make sure that lives are being brought into this world with equity, because that's what we're all looking forward to, right? To make sure that everyone has what they need to succeed. So for me, that's a part of celebrating life. It's protecting life and not being desensitized when we see these horrible things happen, but to use it as a way to empower us to make sure that I don't want this to happen 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now. And what can I do right now to make sure that that stops? So that's how that coordinates. with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It ties in very nicely because there are parents out there who are watching right now, or there's an aunt and an uncle who's watching right now that there's a baby in their family. And everything that you have shared will empower them to help that baby to make it to the first year and beyond, right? And so let's celebrate the life that we have right now and that we've gotten some new information and we can do something different because of it. So thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having me.
No,
I had a
you-
good time.
I'm glad that you had a good time. I hope that the audience as well. And I always end with, "Now what, Lord?" It's a prayer that you have to pray. Now that you have this new information and you've broadened your thinking, you've broadened your awareness, what will you do differently? And I don't want you to just watch this and say, "Oh, that was a good segment, that Rasheeda was good." But I want you to watch it and say, "What can you do?" What can you do to make certain that the black or brown baby in your family or that's in your circle, in your life, will make it to their first birthday and beyond? And if you are planning to be pregnant, make certain that you are as healthy as you possibly can be and that you are aware of the abundance of resources that are available to you. The one that I want us to think about, especially for dads, is the Fatherhood Initiative. Look that up, Google it, research it, because I'm certain that there's tons of information so that dads feel supported. This is not just about the mom. This is about the family. And so celebrate your life and celebrate the baby's life. And I am so grateful that we had this conversation. Now, looking forward to next week, we're going to continue the discussion about grief. And I'm going to have a friend of mine, her name is Beth Sump, and she is going to come and tell her story about how she lived through the unexpected passing of her daughter at a very young age, and how she's thrived through that and how she's persevered through it. And I think there's so much for us to learn. This is, in life, we can't escape death. We can't escape grief, but we can learn how to live with it, thrive through it, and then praise the Lord in spite of it, right? Because He is the reason why we can celebrate life. And that just goes back to the scripture. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice. And I always say, I'm choosing to rejoice in it and be glad. So thank you so much for spending your Sunday with me. I look forward to our time together next week, same station, KAZ, at 5 o'clock p.m. Thanks and be blessed until the next time. Oh, Rasheeda, I just love you. Girl, give me a hug.